video, we are going to take a look into our economy's growth as stated by news outlets. Now, the reason I say growth is there's been a lot of talk about recovery and economic prosperity, but here we're going to examine this data very objectively. Now, as you may know, I'm Matthew Pohl, and we have a compelling question to ask today. Is the U.S. economy truly on the verge of a booming era, as some claim, or is there much more to this story than meets the eye? Now, before we dive right into this chart, I want to ask for your support. If this topic interests you in any way, I wish to help keep you informed with our unbiased opinion. And to help me, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our channel. Your support keeps us going and enables us to keep providing this type of quality content. All right, thanks. So now let's go ahead and see this thing. Now, before we get into the details, let me clarify what exactly you're looking at. This chart compares the actual growth of the U.S. economy to pre-pandemic predictions made by the International Monetary Fund, also known as IMF. It serves as a gauge of how well our economy is performing relative to expectation. Now, it's evident, as seen in this chart, that the U.S. is surpassing the IMF's predictions within about a 1% margin. And you can also see how poorly other regions are doing, with the entire world performing at negative 3% under IMF, and countries like China coming in around negative 4%. Now, this doesn't show where GDP is, nor does it account for inflation. If you were just looking solely at this chart and nothing else, you would likely believe that we're in a better place than we were pre-pandemic. But you and I know I wouldn't leave you hanging. So first, let's look at the GDP chart. Now, taking a closer look at this chart, you can see US GDP growth over the past 3 years. Now, don't forget about the last chart that showed we outperformed IMF's prediction. However, when you consider that GDP has increased from only 20.72 trillion to 22.23 trillion, a mere 7.28% rise, inflation has surged by over 17% during that same period. Now, this raises the concern about, are we in a recovering economy? In fact, if we account for inflation, it suggests an adjusted negative growth of approximately negative 10%. Now, let's shift our attention to wage growth and its correlation with inflation. Another data point that the media is touting, but in reality is cringing when you know the truth. Now, this chart illustrates the median real hourly earnings of workers. It measures how well median wages are faring year over year, and from the looks of it, you would guess that wages are going up. So the average citizen should be feeling better than before the pandemic, right? Well, actually wrong. While the news celebrates the return of wage increases to just above pre-pandemic levels, most Americans still feel financially strained. Now, this is due to their diminished purchasing power, as inflation has surged over 17% in the last 3 years total. If wages had kept pace with that inflation, we would see a median real wage of around $28 per hour. However, the current figure stands at about $25 an hour. Now, I'm going to talk to you about a possible silver lining, how the U.S. compares to other nations, particularly the G7 countries. Our next chart compares the inflation rate of the United States to those of G7 countries, including Italy, Germany, the UK, France, the Euro area, Canada, and Japan. Now, in terms of inflation, we are outperforming these G7 nations. Our economic policies and monetary reform have positioned us well in managing inflation. Now, core HICP, also known as the Core Harmonized Index of Consumer Prices, as seen on the right side of the chart, indicates how effectively our inflation is decelerating compared to the rest of the world. Now, it suggests that the other G7 countries closely follow the lead of the US. Our Federal Reserve is obviously shaping rules and reforms for a robust economy, and other countries are following. Now, as we contemplate whether the US economy is genuinely booming, it's imperative to know your numbers. Now, as I've always said, when you argue opinions with numbers, numbers always win. Now, while we have navigated post-pandemic challenges relatively well, concerns about inflation and wage stagnation demand our attention. Well, that wraps it up for this topic. Thanks for joining me in this video, Market Pulse members. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, please hit the like button, throw your comments in the comment section below, subscribe to our channel, and ring that notification bell for me. Your support is invaluable and enables us to deliver an unbiased analysis. Remember, critical thinking and informed analysis are key.